Hi, I'm Liam Jones, aka Cera Alba. I'm a DJ, music producer and music instructor here at Point Blank. In this final video in the series of 3, I'll be talking about beat gridding and beat gridding on your hardware and the remix decks. For more information on courses in London, LA and online, check www.pointblanklondon.com. Okay, so now I'm just going to talk about beat gridding on your hardware and also the remix decks and how to run them and what's the advantages of using this controller over, say, using an F1 controller. So first of all, beat gridding. So obviously this is normally something that would be done on a laptop, but Native Instruments have kind of incorporated to use it on here. So I've picked this track, it's Moderat's Bad Kingdom, and I know for a fact, obviously, that this track, when it loads into the deck, it automatically doesn't find the correct kick position. And obviously that can be an issue if you're syncing tracks together or if you've just generally mixing, you might have some issues with the beat grid. This actually grids the track to the hi-hats. So let's just bring it in. So, I mean, it sounds fine at the moment. I think the speed of the track is fine. So the overall analysis of the track is okay. So how do we change the beat grid? Because on here we can see, you might not be able to see from your screens, but the actual grid is in the incorrect position. So if I press the edit button, it brings up this nice panel here, really accurate, and you can see the white marker is actually the play marker. It's not technically what's playing now, it's just taking a slice of the track so I can see basically where the issue is. The controllers across here, we've got an offset which changes the offset position, so we could sort of drag it across if we wanted to, but it's a bit long-winded. The 2 BPM controls here, so you've got a full BPM control which changes the before the point increment, and then you've got a second one which does the 0.0 increments. Don't need to change the BPM on this track, I just want to show you how to use the tap function to get the accurate or correct position for the kick drum. So on here we've got the tap function, and it's really accurate with this hardware. I have to say they've done really well. All I need to do is tap the button in time for the kick drum to make sure that the grid hits correctly. So if I hit the tap function now, 1, 2, 3, 4, you can see it jumps nicely there into position. And now that that position looks like it's locked, you could probably test it by syncing it to a track which is perfectly locked, but by looking visually that looks correct. So all I need to do is press lock. Now that's locked, that'll be saved onto your tractor, and then you won't have any more issues when you upload this track and play it in future. Okay, so the next point I want to talk about now is the remix decks. So, how do we get to our remix deck? Also, once you've finished with your editing, you can just press edit to get back out of that. Another point to notice actually as well is to jump back to the start of a track without necessarily having to use this dragging motion. If you just press Shift and Q, it'll automatically jump you to the back to the start of the track. So yeah, remix decks is the next point I want to talk about. And firstly, how to access your remix deck. Okay, so there's 2 buttons here at the bottom of the controller we've got written that say deck here. They're highlighted in blue, which means you'll be using the audio channels on your Traktor S8. If we press these buttons in, you can see that it loads up our remix deck, and that's how you flick between the controls of both either remix decks or the audio channels. And so now I've just loaded up one of my own remix sets, which I've built together combining 2 tracks of my own. So the same way you would load a track into it, you come to Browse function, and the easy thing to do is just go to Track Collection, Remix Sets, scroll down and select your remix set. It's just playing at the moment, so we'll just load it back in. And make sure you've dragged your remix sets into Traktor. Obviously make sure that Traktor has access to the audio files, because obviously if you've deleted them or anything like that, it won't be able to access these files. So it's fully loaded. You can see there the coloured pads are representative on the screen. The screen is also really clear, really easy text to read, I find, and for such a small screen it's very high resolution. You can see also down here on the remix pads, the difference someone will notice who's perhaps been using the F1 is that there's a reduced amount of pads. So that means that when scrolling through to find different samples, you're reduced in the amount you can have on per time. So to show you that quickly, scrolling through is simply done by these 2 square right buttons here. So you can see I can just scroll through the different samples. So let's get a sample going. It's just a standard kick drum. Get the channel up as well. There we go. Quite quiet, that's not too bad. You can also change the quantize function, and for those who don't understand the quantize function, basically that means when the quantize function is on, Traktor will set the position that you're allowed to release a sample on, so that keeps your timing correct. I'd absolutely recommend doing that unless you're a whiz at keeping the timing. So on here, if we press the lower square, you can see my quantize is at 1/4 of a beat. I tend to find it's best to keep it on 4, just because that keeps the timing pretty accurate. So let's bring in another part. Let's bring in the kick with the bass. So there we go, we've got kick with bass now. So I'm going to bring in some hi-hats. So I've got a closed hi-hat here. Bring the volume up a little bit. Sounds okay. Let's maybe advance this and bring in the next element. So I've broken all these tracks up myself. On the first channel I've got kind of kick and bass and then some extra elements. So I've got kick, bass and a slight loop, so you'll hear a little bit of a percussive loop there. And then I've got a full loop which includes the clap. So you can hear the clap now. Obviously you can break these up in any manner you want to. I've got kind of percussion on my second channel, so basically my first channel, and then percussion second channel, and then I've got kind of leads, pads, some extra little bits on my fourth channel, on my third channel, and then I kept vocals and some kind of drum hits on my fourth channel. So let's just get a little vocal here. So this is again just a track that I've broken down into parts. I've also added a few other extra bits here, so we've got like a kick, which I can play just off the cuff, or a snare. So again, you can kind of play around with those, and I'll show you how you can do more with that later. So what advantages do we have of using the remix decks with the S8 controller? So we've got 4 parameters controls here and 4 on and off switches. These are representative of this small band at the bottom of the screen here. So we've got an effect send option. If we use these arrows, we can scroll through to the 2 other options, which include filter and a pitch. So it's a pitch control. So what this basically means is that we've got individual controls for each of these elements. So let's get back another vocal loop on here. So and I'm going to show you how you can use your effects to affect individual parts. So let's go to our effects here, just change that. And you can also see that it's the same with the effects, they're touch sensitive. So as soon as I touch them, it'll bring up the effect sends on my actual screen. So if I turn this effect send on, so I'm only sending at the moment the effects to the vocal, make sure it's selected on the channel, turn it on, you should get some echo, or delay, sorry, on the vocal. So it's really useful. So now all I'm doing is affecting the delay onto the vocal. I can then start affecting the hat if I want it to as well. Quite interesting, you can do really obviously unique effects and just affect certain parts of a track, which is great. Let's just turn that vocal off. So now I'm just going to show you some of the other effects we've got on here. So we've got a filter, so that just basically means we've got a nice high and low pass filter that we can select on certain parts. We've also got a pitch bend, so let's get a part where we can really show you the pitch bend. So I've actually created this track, 1, 2, 3, 4. I've also created a lead, or broken down a lead from another track I've got, so I'll show you this now. The one I wanted. So this is actually a lead I've broken up a different track, so I'm now creating a completely different track out of the 2 tracks I've got. And I can show you now the pitch control on this kind of leaded instrument. It's quite interesting, you can create different unique elements with that. So what else can you do with this controller, and what else can you do with the remix decks? So I'm just going to show you a few other things you can do. You can actually sample other parts of other tracks and bring them into the track you're playing. So I'm just going to bring this down. Bring in another element, second, so let's bring in this bounce bass. 3, 4. I'm going to filter this out because we're getting a little bit of... So I might just bring in... And then I'm just going to bring in a kick and clap on its side without a previous bass. And now I'm going to sample a track from over here and bring it into this pad as well, bring it into this remix set as well. So I've got a track here, let's just make sure my timing's right. Let's change our percussion as well, bring our percussion up. So now I'm going to take a sample from this track. So the way we do that is find a blank pad. So I'm going to use this one down here, probably on the vocal pad. Just change the amount, so let's just get that up to 16. Change the capture point, I can just turn that, so deck B, that's correct. Just cue this in, just make sure this is alright. They sync together as well, which is fine. 3, 4. And all I'll do is press when I want to start recording from that, and it'll automatically take that part across. So okay, I've recorded that in, I'm now going to bring it in on this track. Now I'll bring in part of this track as well. So again, you can create endless kind of mixes and different parts of tracks, and obviously you can just keep the vocal from that side if you wanted to, and then bring the kick back in. So it's kind of endless in what you can do with regards to taking different mixing points and different samples of each track, and you can obviously do this all now on the fly while you're DJing. So again, a really powerful and really useful tool in Remix Decks is sampling of the tracks.